My name is Abbi Ruppert, and this is my teaching demo. Today we're talking about assemblage art, also known as found object art, combine, mixed media assemblage, etc. Assemblage art is made by assembling various elements scavenged by the artist. It's an additive process. It combines items that are not traditionally used for art making, such as discarded everyday household items or novelty items. And another way you can think about assemblage art is 3D collage. Assemblage art first popped up in the Dada movement, which began in Germany around 1916. Artists during this time were really challenging traditional art aesthetics following World War I. And an artist working in assemblage during Dada was Kurt Schwitters. Fast forward to the 50s and 60s, assemblage art really starts to take off, especially in the US. Artists are experimenting a lot with assemblage art. Amidst the Second World War, artists are beginning to question everything, especially traditional definitions of art representing timeless beauty and traditions of working in one media at a time. A key artist working during this time is Louise Nevelson. She would roam the streets of New York, pick up discarded wood she found on the street, and take it back to her studio, build some assemblages like this. Another assemblage artist during this time is Robert Rauschenberg. He coined the term combine and used that to describe his work. Another important assemblage artist is Betty Saar, who would select racist imagery so that she could reclaim and recontextualize it to represent liberation for Black people in her work. So assemblage is radical, and it defies the traditional sanctity of art with everyday junk. It is also environmental. So it's a form of recycling, essentially, by using what already takes up space and to create new work rather than purchasing special art making materials. And maybe the coolest thing of all is it is economically accessible. So you can make with whatever you have on hand, or you can scavenge. So how do we get started? Today, I'm going to be demonstrating some attachment methods from using fasteners, clipping and hanging, tying and wrapping, using glue, sewing and threading, and using tension. So let's do a demo. So in today's demo, I'm going to be demonstrating some methods of attachment for making assemblage artwork, which can result in something similar to this once finished. It's important to remember that when you're using found objects, all items bring their own associations to the work. They all have their own baggage. The items you're drawn to can tell you a lot about yourself, about your interests, even your history and what you're drawn to, what you find familiar. In my work, I tend to be drawn to items that have history, older antique items, often found in the home. There's no right or wrong way to do assemblage. You could be really drawn to logs that wash up on the creek and make assemblage work out of that, totally acceptable, or out of discarded plastics. The possibilities are endless. So what you'll need to get started are some items to assemble. You will need some miscellaneous tools. A drill comes in handy, pliers, scissors, drill bits. And if you're using power tools, you'll also need safety glasses for personal protective equipment. That's also an essential tool. You will need some miscellaneous glue, such as wood glue, hot glue, etc. some fasteners, so that's screw eyes, screws, nails, a hammer if you plan to use nails, and some wire or rope for tying and wrapping things together. When getting started, it's helpful to select some materials you can assemble and build off of. A few of my favorites are wood materials are very often used in assemblage art, and one of my personal favorites is window screen. Anything that's like a mesh or screen or a woven surface that allows you to weave a material in and out of. Our first method of attachment from the lecture is using fasteners. So that's screws, screw eyes, nails, staples, etc. I'm going to drill some pilot holes in this piece of wood. I'm going to attach this metal screen with the wood, and I'm going to drill some holes to get me started that I can put some screws into. So when I choose a drill bit, I want it to be the same width or slightly smaller than the screw minus the threads, so that my hole's not too big, so that the screw will catch when it goes in. Also, the way you put in a drill bit is twist this. This tightens and loosens your chuck. Tighten until it's nice and snug. It's not going to fall out, and then you're ready to go. I have my pilot holes drilled. I'm now going to put in a screw. I've changed out my drill bit for a driver bit that matches the screw that I'm using. It's a short screw so that it doesn't protrude too much out on the backside. Next is clipping and hanging. So using clips such as binder clips, paper clips, you could use a bobby pin, safety pins, etc. to clip objects onto your surface. So I'm going to use this binder clip to clip on this little Valentine from this old Valentine from the early 1900s. I'm going to clip it on right there. And from here, the next attachment method is tying and wrapping. So I can now tie materials onto the surface. I've got some great protruding screws here on which I can tie materials. And I can also use another attachment method, which is the sewing and threading. So I have this wonderful window screen that allows you to weave on the surface. So I could take a piece of wire, poke it through, and here's where I can begin to start playing around with composition and drawing on the surface with my materials. If I want to weave through a material like this that's got a frayed end, it's a bit difficult to get through. I can make a couple holes in the screen bigger. Another trick that's helpful is you can put a piece of tape on it to make the ends pointy. Then you can just take the tape off whenever you're finished. Kind of like the eyelet of your shoelace. And then it goes through. Next we have tension. So pulling and stretching material, often a stretchy material, across or against a surface. Nylon has a really rich history in art making for its incredible ability to stretch and its transparent quality as well. So it's a very versatile material. So a little bit of tying to get started, and then some tension where I can decide where I would like to connect to. Can also, I've got some strings and fabric playing here. I can also take a harder material, start to pull things towards each other, and now I'm getting more three-dimensional, volumetric space with my materials. Last attachment method we're going to go over is glue. So I'm going to attach this piece of wood to this piece of wood. Therefore, I'm going to use wood glue. But there's all kinds of glue you can use depending on the materials you're working with. I do want a good amount of glue on here. If I start getting too much, it's going to get really sloppy. But if I put too little, it's not going to want to stick. So I do want a well-covered surface for glue. And I can reinforce. This is convenient because it already has holes from where it was screwed to something in the past. So I can come back in when this is dry and reinforce this with some screws. That's another great point, is it's when using found objects, you should, whenever possible, work with your objects rather than against them. So if I've got holes already made from this item's past life, I'm gonna go ahead and use those and not make more work for myself by drilling new holes for no reason. This is the part where I make a hanging wire on the back with 2 small screws, some extra wire, and I'm wrapping the wire around the screws and around itself to create the hanging wire and using my wire cutters. Think about contrasting materials between hard versus soft material, also feminine versus traditionally masculine materials, as well as domestic versus industrial materials, and as always, all of the associations that come along with found objects and what they mean to you and what they mean to others. Working with assemblage is economically accessible in that you can use whatever materials you have or you can find. In fact, a large part of the assemblage process is finding, scavenging, collecting materials that you're drawn to ahead of time so that you can draw from those materials to create your assemblage. Working like this is an intuitive and organic process, and it will be different for everyone. And that's why I'm here as your instructor to help you work through that process and to develop a method that works best for you.